I'm Dr. David McKee. I'm the CEO of Slingshot Simulations, and I'm coming to this discussion from the perspective of integration at a software and data level as the chair of the 3T group within the Digital Twin Consortium.
Hi, and I'm John Turner. I'm the VP of Innovative Solutions at Gafcon. I lead the digital division of Gafcon, and our focus is on enabling better outputs for our owners, who are very much focused not just on the design or construction or any of the silos within the process, but on the overall building life cycle as supported by what is now being called the digital building life cycle as enabled through digital twins. That's a very good question, but I would ask whether that's the right question we should be starting with. Because from my perspective, we're focused very much on outcomes rather than outputs. If I can give you an analogy, if I wanted to travel from where I live in San Diego to meet with David in the UK in Leeds, the outcome is I want to be able to meet with David. I have to find a way in which I can get there. So I need a series of maps. If I'm going to fly, how do I get from my house to the airport? Hopefully I don't have to inform the pilot how to get from San Diego to London, but then I'm going to have to find my way out of Heathrow Airport. I need another type of map to find my way to transportation so that I can travel to Leeds, and then from Leeds to travel to where David lives. Unless I have the way to integrate all these different maps, or in the world of the digital twin, all these different systems and subsystems, I cannot support the outcome that I require.
I think I'll jump in there as well and say that actually the question is about enabling integration and interoperability at various levels. So it's a technical question of how do we manage it, but it also has challenges around that are social, political, and legal as well. So for me, the question should be, how do we address those challenges rather than where does the digital threat start?
David, that's a very, very good point, because one of the things we find within and I'll use the word of construction. I hate using the word of construction because from an owner's perspective, that's really only 15% of the building life cycle. But if we look at the way we are siloed through the planning, the design, the construction, the operation silos, and we look at the way our legal frameworks are providing barriers to the smooth flow of data. So, for example, architects have to produce documents which are design intent. Legally, the only documents they need to provide are paper documents, and those documents are of no use in enabling the digital thread. So we have to focus very much on the legal aspects of it. There could be some political aspects there in changing the legal framework, but then also the fact that construction at the moment is very confrontational. We don't have a collaborative environment. We're not thinking of the overall process of building and operating a building in the same terms that a manufacturer would think of enabling a digital supply chain across multiple vendors, across multiple different phases of the process. And that has to be enabled by the technical solution.
Following on from what we've just said there, I think John, you're highlighting that very well, that actually without the integration and without the interoperability, we're not going to be able to realize the true value of a digital twin. And we've all seen the report of the numbers from McKinsey saying the potential value of a digital twin can be in the order of trillions of dollars per year economically. But I think that can only be achieved if we actually truly facilitate integration at every stage through that process. And you alluded to there's that 15% point. I'd probably argue that in the lifetime of a building, which is hopefully 40 years or more, it's probably even smaller than that. That actually it's only a small part, and we need to think about all those different stakeholders that will change over time, and the IT systems and OT systems that will change, and from sensors and cameras that will be installed and replaced and reinstalled. And that's going to introduce some really interesting challenges throughout the way.
I totally agree. And these challenges, if we leave them to individual software providers, generally I find in integrating solutions for owners, the software providers are very much aligned in propagating the silos. For example, design software is aligned with architects. Construction software is aligned with GCs. Nobody is aligning that software with the needs of the owners, and owners really need to step up and say, we own the buildings, but in addition to owning the physical building, we now have to change our perspective and form a process so that we can actually own the virtual building from when it starts in terms of requirements right the way through to when it's decommissioned. And that's going to be a very different perspective to bring to the world of owners. So my focus is working with the infrastructure group with a scope of both the horizontal world of infrastructure, the roads and railways and bridges, as well as the vertical world, which are the buildings. And making sure that in terms of an owner, then within a campus, we need to be able to know how those buildings are connected together. But then as we extend out, we need to know how those campuses are connected into the world of smart cities and the wider environment. So our focus at the moment is not trying to solve the technical issues. That's why we need David and his perspective, but is trying to make sure that we can have the conversation through what we call an abstraction layer. How can we start to decompose our processes into finite phases, finite steps that we can use to delegate to various Tiger teams to work up solutions, and also align that to some of the technology solutions and technology standards which are now being pulled together by the other parts of the Digital Twin Consortium. So to us, to start off with, because we're very much looking at a conflict, bringing together the world of technology and the world of construction. And the two sides don't speak the same language. So unless we have this framework, this abstraction layer, the decomposition of all of these tasks into a framework that we can use to communicate across all the participants, all the stakeholders, succeed in our wish to change this entire process.
I think I'll jump in there, John, because I think you've alluded to something that's quite interesting there, is the need for taxonomies and a level of standardization at that top level. And that's one of the main things that we're focusing on, both in my role at Slingshot Simulations, but also within the 3T working group, where we're really trying to explore how do we look across multiple domains, so multiple verticals, from aerospace defense to built environment to rainforest is an area that we do some work in as well. And actually, how does that all come together under one banner of digital twins that are holistic in some way, that can interact and interoperate? And I'm going to give an example, which is from my experience in terms of automotive, where I say, let's look at a digital twin and say, well, where does it start? So is it a digital twin of the engine control unit? Is it actually a digital twin of the powertrain? Or is it of the whole vehicle? Or is it of the 10,000 vehicles in your fleet driving around a city? And at what point does that interface within that smart city digital twin that, John, you've alluded to? And how does that all start to work? And there's going to be different standards, different open source tools. There's also going to be proprietary tools in there. And actually this mess, or even this mashup, is really where we're trying to solve that problem and actually bring all the parties to come and play nice together. I think that's really the big challenge and the big question that we're trying to address.
David, I totally agree with you. Just to give you a quick analogy, we sometimes find architects talk about a building component with one name, the GC uses another name, the vendor uses another name, and the building operator may be another name. Sometimes I equate the environment that we work in to bringing an Englishman, a Frenchman, and an Italian into the same room and saying, provide this building. They don't speak the same language to start off with. And even if you train them to speak the same language, they don't have the same comprehension. So unless we bring this down to a world of standards, and those standards are used to define the interoperability, we are not going to succeed in bringing together all the different parts that are required to successfully deliver a digital twin.
I mean, one thing I'll just add, and I think this is something that we easily forget, is that we also need to make it accessible so that these can't be opaque standards. And we've all seen standards where it's thousands upon thousands of pages, and actually that's not useful to all the different parties. There need to be a way to simplify it down for the appropriate stakeholder so they get what they need. If you're a city manager, you don't care about the engine control units. You just want to know that you've got 5,000 diesel cars, 1,000 electric cars, and however many petrol cars on the road.
It's interesting that the same, although we come from very different perspectives on our industry, we're finding that the problems we are facing are very similar. And I think this has been the value of the conversations within the Digital Twin Consortium, is that we've realized that even coming together from very different backgrounds and with very different problems to solve, we can actually share a lot of our abilities to solve our individual problems and then propagate the solutions across a much wider environment. So to come back to our original question of where the digital thread starts, I say the start depends on the outcome that you want to support. So define where you want to end up, and you'll know where to start.
I think from my perspective, actually, it's about understanding how we make sure that digital and digital thread almost don't need to be a subject of conversation. It needs to be ingrained in everything that we do, in that actually we're going to be tracking it, we're going to be integrating, we're going to be synchronizing with the digital twin. And therefore, the digital twin has this ability where it becomes the ecosystem for managing all of that, with different parties able to move in and out of the value chain. And at that point, we start really realizing the transformational value that digital twins can bring.